All right, it's Daybreak on the Rise News, and it's time for the press preview. A first look at the papers. We'll take a look at sister publication, This Day newspapers. Let's see what This Day is saying. It says, FIRS to the rescue, a subsidy Gulps NNPC's revenue. Two riders. Revenue generating agency now contributes more than over 60% to FAAC. Cash-strapped Nigeria again loses $650.7 million crude to force majeure, equipment failure, and others. All right, you see there, Ariwola emerges acting CJN after Mohammed is forced out with some riders. Don't let Nigerians lose confidence in judiciary. That is coming from the president to the Supreme Court justices. NBA links resignation to frosty relations with colleagues, and Atiku commends ex-Chief Justice Makinde congratulates successor Ariwola. All right, INEC 2023, INEC chairman assures United Nations of credible polls, and just at the top, Master Emefiele, Nigeria's forex policy targeted at preserving naira value, others.
The Punch newspaper this morning, leading with the Supreme Court crisis, says NBA wants ex-CJN probed. Ariwola sworn in. Workers demand autonomy. Some riders. Ex-CJN's probe necessary for justice administration, says the NBA, and some CSOs insist no allegation should be swept under the carpet. And the picture there is of the presidents, Muhammadu Buhari swearing in Justice Olukayode Ariwola. Let's take a look at more headlines from the Punch newspaper. INEC registers 10.4 million new voters, and just above the nameplate of the Punch this morning, Ikwere Madu, federal government probes organ donors' data privacy breach. That's on page 22.
The Nation newspaper is leading with suspected memory disorder forced ex-Chief Justice of Nigeria, Tanko, to quit. Justice Ariwola steps in as acting Chief Justice of Nigeria until he's confirmed by the Senate. And this year, PDP, the People's Democratic Party, threatens Obasanjo, that's the former president, for attacking his former vice, President Atiku Abubakar. Tinubu in France for talks.
Yeah, Tribune has almost all the same stories. But let's look at Tribune. This has been generating some talk. Call to bear arms. Chief of Defense Staff, about counters and Farah governor. He says, Matawale's directive in order. Other governors should follow suit. This is coming from Gani Adams. Well, now it's time for state police. This is coming from Akeredolu, the governor of Ondo State. Catholic Commissioner Communication raised alarm over frequent killing of priests. Like I said, the other stories, the Obasanjo thing. And petrol subsidy hits 854 billion naira as NNPC remitted zero in May. This is coming from FAAC.
Let's take a look at some international papers. The Independent this morning, leading with Raducanu, brought us to straight sets victory. That's her there. Britain's 19-year-old US Open champion makes a successful center court debut at Wimbledon yesterday. And just below that, Russia targets shopping center with 1,000 inside, at least 10 killed in missile strike in central Ukraine.
The Financial Times. Well, let's take a look at the Times then. Putin will pay for his barbarity, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson insists.
And then I newspaper, murder at the shops. There's one paper I want to talk about where it says women have a problem. All right, but okay, is that time? The Times, it says women, we have a problem. You see it there where Putin will pay for his barbarity. PM is insisting. Okay, I think it's time to bring in Emmanuel Bello. Emmanuel, glad to have you join us on Daybreak. Yes, good morning, Emmanuel. Okay, well, let's start with this day. It says FIRS to rescue subsidy Gulps NNPC's revenue. It says revenue generating agency now contributes over 60% to FAAC. What do you make of that?
It's highlighting two major problems that we're dealing with currently, and it's a good thing that we're focusing on it. Every other people seem to be focusing on something else, but it's good to look at the very heart of the economy itself, that is oil production in this country. So that story carries two major problems underpinning some of the issues that we're dealing with in that sector. First, the crisis of the fact that we're spending too much on subsidy. These are the warnings by experts that is what is going to happen, and that those monies are going to climb. And that so we are beginning to see that NNPC is clearly just doing nothing now but servicing subsidy. Those warnings have been there that is going to happen. Then the other problem is the production, the oil production crisis itself. Because of those thefts, oil theft, because of the crisis of even facilities and host communities and the rest, we're not producing, we're not meeting even our quota at OPEC, and that's a crisis. At the time that other countries, oil-producing countries, are taking advantage of global emergencies and making monies or actually expanding on production and getting revenues, we're not doing that. We're not able to do that. It's a sad prognosis or reflection on the crisis of oil production in a country, in a major oil-producing country like ours. But then the flip side is what the internal revenues are doing. That FIRS is coming to the rescue. Countries do that. Countries like Norway, Canada, the United States, who are also oil producing, they leverage on what they're able to generate internally to be able to run their country. In fact, you don't see them in most cases, depending solely on oil production. They look at what is being generated. So FIRS is doing a good job, and this is also a good testimony to it of the kind of thing it's doing. States, and it's doing everything to see what they can do to expand on those revenue generation. But the story is pointing to what is going on now. I think basically the crisis of those subsidies, the monies we are spending, and all the experts have warned that it's going to crown up. The president, of course, last week saying that, telling in that Bloomberg's report, saying that, look, there's nothing you can do about subsidies for now, and that every country will have to think inwards to think of how to deal with crisis. They thought of taking out those subsidy payments, but when they look at the crisis on ground, they have to shift it. But of course, the warnings keep coming in that, look, that is what's going to happen, and that we're just going to finance those subsidies and not remitting much. And that's what is being ailing NNPC, not able to remit to the federal accounts. And so, of course, it's affecting businesses at the state level, at the local, at the sub-national levels. They are not able to meet some of their, in fact, there are prognoses that maybe some states might actually practically not be able to meet with their demands. But FRC is to the rescue, like our story said, trying to see how it can expand more on revenue generations to see whether they can service those demands of the country. But whether you like it or not, we're face to face with a crisis of dwindling revenues due to those thefts, and it's actually a very dangerous prediction for a country that in the past have depended heavily on revenues from oil, especially now that we're not able to even take advantage of those, prevailing prices in the oil sector globally. That tells you that we have a serious problem on our hands, and this story is pointing straight to that. But like I said, on the flip side, looking at what we're doing to see how internally generated revenues can actually be improved on, and it's also a robust opportunity to do that, to ensure that we expand on that sector and meet the demands of dealing with the day-to-day demands of the states and the local levels.
Newly sworn in Chief Justice of Nigeria, Ariwola, speaking to reporters yesterday, said there's no controversy in the Supreme Court, but our national dailies will beg to differ this morning. Punch says there's a Supreme Court crisis. This state newspaper says the former CJN Tanko Mohammed was forced out due to corruption allegations laid against him by the other Supreme Court justices. Meanwhile, the Nation's newspaper says he had to resign for suspected memory disorder, forced him to quit. And the Nation is also reporting that he has been dealing with this illness for about a year and a half, and that has been affecting his actions or inactions in the Supreme Court. What are your thoughts on this story?
Look at it from a general point of view of the judiciary itself, because Sabine, we've been worried about this in Kechi for quite a while now, looking at various stories around the issue of the Supreme Court. And I think for me, what the president said yesterday is very important, that the judiciary has to be very careful so that Nigerians do not lose complete faith in it. And in the case of the outgoing or the sacked, like some papers reporting that he sacked, some say he was forced out, some say, and the Nation newspaper even telling us what that illness is. As of yesterday, we were wondering what the ill health was all about. But the Nation newspaper saying that it's fading memories and inability to remember things, and that during meetings, the CJN can't even remember resolutions, all that. That's dangerous because that's the apex body of, justice in the country. And if you have a CJN who can remember resolutions or judgments reached, that makes it a bit very dangerous. But whether he was forced out or he resigned, because a lot of people favor the story that, look, he was just forced out, and that there's been allegations of corruption around his person. Remember that even those elections, the primaries elections, also were in the mix. The fact that some of his kids or his children were, emerged winners of some of the primaries, and people wondered what that would do for this for justices, especially when it comes to the issue of elections. And you see, it gets you to the point of corruption in the judiciary, and what the president said, that Nigerians must not lose faith in the judiciary. You find out that politicians sometimes are even really willing to go to court. There's a saying among the local, especially those at the local level, who say, look, let us win the election, let the other people go to court. What that means is, as far as they're concerned, as soon as those cases get to the court, it's not nobody's sure where those cases will do. That is how bad a lot of people view the judiciary. With even some people saying, happy that, okay, their case has gone to court. Not because they think that they're going to get justice there, but because they think that, look, they can take advantage of, some of the issues around the judicial system, maybe delay cases, maybe delay justices or judgments and all of that. The president yesterday saying that, look, the judiciary must, especially under this new CJN, must ensure that as we go into the election period, where the election season now, and the courts are going to play major roles in interpreting those electoral acts, in determining what has happened on the field and everything. Some of the issues will have to be done at the court levels. So if Nigerians are losing faith in the judiciary, it's a dangerous thing. So some people will say it's a good intervention, and that is some of the justices, of course, some of the players in that industry, stakeholders, are already hailing the fact that the SCJN, even actually calling for his probe and saying that, look, it's very important that Nigerians know that, look, their justices are actually, holding strongly to the sanctity of, jurisprudence and all of that. So it was an interesting development. For some people, it's like a game changer in that sector. But for the president yesterday, I think I will echo what he's saying, that, look, it's the last frontier for justice for the common man. And so it's very important what happens in the courts, what happened to the Supreme Court especially, and to those justices, and what is happening in that sector generally. So I think whether we interpret it as being forced out or he resigned, a lot of people would like to see better administration, better judiciary, and better jurisprudence, especially now that a lot will be depending on what the courts say, especially as we go into the elections.
We're very grateful for your take this morning, Manuel Bello.